Hi, my name is Pip. This is my review of The Meaning of Mariah Carey, which is a book that I listened to as an audiobook and actually finished a while ago. I saw a review of this book on Goodreads, which I thought was super accurate. And it said that unless you're a lamb, which is one of Mariah's sort of diehard fans, that's what they call themselves, apparently, lambs, there's only so long that you can spend in the presence of a diva before you need a break. It's true. So I had to listen to this book in lots of different sections because there was only so long I could take with a diva. And there were times that I really wanted to walk away from this book, if I'm completely honest. Actually, there were multiple times that I really wanted to walk away. If you know anything about Mariah's story, you know that she had a colourful childhood. You knew that she was poor. I didn't realise how poor she was and quite how colourful her childhood was. I'd heard some stories about her sister being a prostitute and things like that, but I think there are elements of coming from a place of privilege where I just had no idea what it was like to grow up as a biracial child in a very poor household in America, which was interesting to read about or listen to because I listened to this as an audiobook. And you can kind of see how that's really kind of affected Mariah for the rest of her life, and particularly her relationships with her siblings, leading to difficulty trusting people and not knowing who to trust because the people who are supposed to love you the most really screwed her over. But I did still struggle with this book. I thought that there would be a lot of interesting revelations because certainly her relationship with Tommy Mottola is interesting because, I mean, she was still with Sony for a long time after they got married, after they got divorced actually, which, and you just hear all these stories about him controlling her, and I just thought it would be different. I thought the story would, I felt like there was almost still a degree of gag order that restrained Mariah. Either that or there's an awful lot of stuff she just doesn't want to share, which is fair enough. Like, she doesn't owe us anything. It didn't feel as honest as I was hoping it would be. It basically, if I'm blunt, felt like she was a naive girl who was awfully talented, who fell in love with a man and in love with an idea and was trying to do her best and pay for half of the house, which she didn't realize was going to be so enormous, while her family were trying to screw her out of money. And she didn't realize how controlling he was until she couldn't breathe anymore. And it just felt like there was no accountability for her role in a relationship. And I'm sure that someone like Tommy Mottola would be very, very difficult to be married to. And I'm quite sure he's controlling. And he's even come out and said that his relationship with Mariah really was problematic because of his behavior. But it just felt like so many of the stories in this book, like I can't actually think of a time where there was a story in which Mariah learnt something from her failure by taking accountability for whatever. It was all, these are the bad things that have happened to me and the bad people who have screwed me over, and I have overcome because I'm talented. If that makes sense. That sounds really harsh, but that's kind of how I felt about this book. It's difficult because I feel like Mariah's been through a hell of a lot of trauma. But reading this book, it felt like the major chip on her shoulder that she came away with was about her hair, which just seemed so insignificant compared to everything else that she had been through. And yet that was the thing that she dedicated a huge amount of time to. And then it just kind of felt like Tommy Mottola entered her story, and then she was never in touch with reality again after that. There were so many references to all the things that she does for her fans that it just felt disingenuous and a bit... There were so many stories that were absurdly descriptive and that just were detailed to an unnecessary degree. Like there was one about her being in a recording studio and having a drink from a styrofoam cup. And then she immediately was like, but darling, that was all there was to drink from, so it wasn't my fault. I know styrofoam's bad for the world. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, such a weird tangent and so unnecessary. And I just kind of walked away feeling like, don't get defensive over an insignificant detail that you chose to put in the book. Like, it's just weird. Just weird. And a perfect example of, like, the extra things that were just put in this book for no apparent reason that kind of made it go on and on, when she's someone who's had such a colorful life that there must be so many stories in her, you know, back pocket that she could have pulled on to fill in this book if she needed to, rather than spend time with a styrofoam cup. I did really struggle with this book, and I feel like I'm being harsh, but it's really because I just don't like being on YouTube and slagging off somebody else's work. But in the same breath, I don't want to be doing book reviews and never being honest. But this felt like, it just felt like she was chronically the victim and never taking any accountability and never in touch with reality. Like the story she was telling about how she was so tired she didn't realize she was being admitted into a psychiatric facility. Like, people don't just admit tired people to psychiatric facilities. They're trained to triage these people. Even if your family are screwing you over, they have limited beds. You must have been having some sort of at least weeping episode, and we've all had weeping episode, no judgment, but the way she told the story just felt dishonest. And like, I just don't believe that you didn't realize you were being checked into a psychiatric facility if all that was wrong with you was that you were tired. Mariah was very defensive about glitter and numerous other things, but I guess that makes sense because she would have learnt how to be defensive as a survival mechanism early on in her life. And I can understand that, but it makes for a frustrating book. She pretends like her relationship with James Packer didn't even happen. She spent about 5 to 10 minutes talking about her relationship with Nick Cannon and their marriage and their children, which was roughly the same amount of time that she spent talking about Luis Miguel and how his hair was flat. It just seemed like the balance of time she spent talking about various things was off, and the balance of how significant they were was off. But then, I mean, who am I to tell you that parts of your life are less significant or more significant than what she feels they are, and she can share whatever the hell she wants. But it just wasn't what I was expecting, nor was it what I was hoping for. And I just think Mariah is someone who would have very interesting stories, and she's just still got her cards very close to her chest, which, again, based on what we know of her childhood, I understand, but it makes for a frustrating book. The thing I really enjoyed most about this book was how she brought her lyrics, and she sings her lyrics in the audiobook, but how she takes lyrics to songs we know, and like even songs like Petals, which is one of my favorites. And I mean, she is a very articulate lyricist, and I think the meaning behind a lot of her lyrics was very clear because she's so articulate. But it was very interesting to hear her tell the full story of how those moments happened, how those lyrics happened, what they mean to her, the significance of that. I think that part of the book was really interesting and well done, and the way she used them and popped them throughout the book was great. But mostly, overall, The Meaning of Mariah Carey was a book I really struggled with. I'm someone who really struggles with books that are just telling the victim story without any accountability or without any attempt to make things right, so to speak. Like, I mean, if your security are making you feel stifled and they're making it so that you can't have a life, you're paying them. Tell them to beat it. It just felt really clear that this was Mariah's version of events, which I guess it always is when you read someone's biography or autobiography. It's their version of events, and they have a right to tell their version of events. And I guess that's why there's that saying, there's 3 versions of what happened. There's your version, my version, and the truth. And it felt like I was being fed a narrative that was very controlled and very thought out, and it just lacked honesty for me, if I'm being honest. And so I really couldn't get on board with this book, even though I really wanted to. You know, like when I was in primary school, 90s Mariah was where it was at. You wanted to be Mariah. We all wanted Mariah's voice. I don't know, it did make me wonder whether Mariah's voice is not truly her own, whether there are things like non-disclosure agreements that are still very tightly wound around her, and that's why it couldn't be a more honest book. You know, like maybe that's why she couldn't talk about James Packer, as opposed to throwing shade on him. Like, I know she's kind of said like she only talked about things that were significant to her. By the end of this audiobook, I think Mariah had lent so far into the darlings and the diva stuff that she'd lost me, and I was gone and never coming back. So that by the time she was doing things like wishing that Princess Diana was still alive so that she could have Instagram and control her own narrative, by the time we got to that, I was in an eye-rolling place. So yeah, not the book for me, not the book I wanted. But I think this book has a very specific market. I think if you're watching this video thinking that I'm trash talking Mariah and that Mariah is amazing and that I should shut the fuck up, then this book is for you. If you're a lamb, this book is for you. If you are everyone else outside of that kind of lamb barrier, I think you might struggle with this book. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star experience for you. I think if you have curiosity about Mariah's life, some of that will be addressed. But I think ultimately, if you're picking up this book because you have curiosity about Mariah's life, I think you're going to walk away a little bit disappointed. But I think if you're a lamb, you're going to bloody love it. And that's really all I can honestly say. And that's being brutally honest about how I felt about this book. So for me, I would give it 2 stars because, I mean, again, it was interesting, it was well written, but it was very long-winded. There was stuff that needed to be edited out. Like I said before, the balance felt wrong. And I don't like a dishonest book. I don't like feeling like, I mean, I don't mind feeling like someone is not putting their entire life and guts and heart on the table for you to dissect. That's fine. You've got to protect yourself, no problem. But I feel like on what should have been a glorious story, an amazing cheese and fruit platter, I was given a grape, if that makes any sense. I feel like it just didn't feel like we were given much. And I don't like that kind of biography. If you're going to do it, you've got to be a bit honest. You've got to be a little bit insightful. You've got to be in touch with reality. And for me, that just wasn't there. I hope you've enjoyed this review of The Meaning of Mariah Carey, or found it at least helpful in deciding whether you would read it or not. Don't forget to let me know in the comments below what you thought of The Meaning of Mariah Carey if you've read it or listened to it. I'd be really interested to hear what other people's thoughts are, if they really loved it and thought I completely missed the mark, or if they felt something similar to what I felt. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more videos and to like this video so that I can grow my channel. Thank you.